BIP of Bizarre Angels Productions, and man, I hope this video does well. You know, I don't know if people think I've been too harsh to the Metal Saga on this channel, despite me not necessarily criticizing the Metal Saga, in fact, defending it in some angles, but more so some of the discourse surrounding it. But here's a video I have only heard discussed on other Reddits. Exactly how many constellations were used in the Metal Saga when you think about it? For those of you who don't know, there are 88 constellations in the sky, and the Metal Saga at least started out with the Beyblades being based off them before eventually doing a hybrid between constellations, beasts, and other motifs, and they eventually dropped the constellations part by the time of Shogun Steel, aka Zero G, and do not come in here blaming Zero G for that. So let's talk. How many constellations did the Beyblade Metal Saga use? If you made it this far, type Sora deserved better in the comments, and let's get started. So, going in order of characters, we know Jinga and Sora had Pegasus, though we never saw Sora's beast. Shame. Kenta, Benkei, Kiyoya, Hikaru and Meimei, Hyoma, Tetsuya, and Tsubasa had the zodiacs of Sagittarius for Sagittarial, Bull for Taurus, Leo for Leon, Aquario for the ladies, Aries, Cancer, and Eagle or Aquila. That's 8 so far. Then Doji, Alexi, and Anton had the Wolf Lupus constellation for 9. Ryuga had Draco and El Drago for 10. And Yu and Hokuto, surprisingly, in the manga, yes, the dog, had Libra. Teru and Chaojin had Virgo. Tobio, Klaus, and Dr. Ziggurat had Capricorn. Ryutaro had Pisces. Dan and Reiki had Gemini. So that's 15 constellations, and now 11 out of the 12 zodiacs accounted for. Side notes, in the comments, tell me in the comments, what's your favorite zodiac? I'd say your actual zodiac, but I don't want you guys to risk asking yourself, so either in or based off your life, or in fiction, or with the zodiac's own lore, what is your favorite zodiac? I'd love to know. Then Phoenix, aka Rio, had a Phoenix for number 16. Reiji and Team Chandora had Serpents in their Serpent Beyblades, 17. Masamune Striker, aka Unicorno, was based on the Unicorn constellation Monoceros, 18. Chiyun had Lacerda, 19. The Cheyenne Zarafa was based off the Giraffe constellation Camelopardalis, 20. Julian, aka Julius, had Perseus, the Medusa Slayer, in his Destroyer, 21. Sophie and Wales had the Whale Beyblade Cetus, although I think that usually goes for sea creatures in general, 22. Carte and Zidane had the Corvus Crow, 23. Argo had Karina, which is part of the Argos Navies trio, 24. Also, a quick warning, because I know someone's going to ask, Argo Navies isn't a constellation anymore, but Karina, Keel, and had to look it up, Vela are the 3 involved in making Argo Navies, which is still 24. Ian had Hercules, which is, well, Ian had Herculeo based on Hercules, 25. I should have saved Busujima earlier for Scorpio, but let's be honest, Demure uses more Scorpio-like abilities in his Beyblade, and Lyra actually summoned the Scorpio Beast. So combined, they're number 26. And Chris has Orion, which would mean the 4 Season Bladers in Fury were the only ones out of the legendary Bladers who had constellations as their sources, putting us at 27. Zeo in both seasons gives us 2. In season 2, he used Flame Bixis based on the constellation Bixis, 28. In season 3, he used Spiral Fox based on Vulpecula, the constellation Fox, 29. Quick tangent. Some people don't like whenever Beyblade names get changed. Personally, I think it's more annoying in bursts because while I get the worries for religious connotations, half of the ones that they changed were really not that big of a deal. Raphael is literally the name of not just an angel, but one of the famous painters in history. And most kids would probably just start thinking of the Ninja Turtle. But for some of the constellations that are based off certain aspects, it doesn't always bother me, so calling it Fox rather than Vulpecula doesn't really bother me. Unless I said that wrong.
Vulpecula.
Okay, I said it right, good. The one I know will upset people is Faust's Beyblade Basalt Horologium being changed to Twisted Tempo. For those of you who don't know, Horologium is a constellation, which is Latin for clock, hence why the design on the facebolt is based on the pendulum clock with 4 clock hands pointing north, south, east, and west with an eye in the center. It also explains why the energy ring has Roman numerals decorating the circumference, and on Roman numeral clocks, instead of being capitalized I and V, 4 is usually presented with 4 uppercase I's because the ring in Japan was horologium instead of tempo. Twisted was originally called basalt because that's what the metal was shaped like. That being said, I do kinda get the change. Horologium isn't exactly an easy name to pronounce, but calling it basalt time wouldn't also be cool either. Although I do have a question for you. If it was up to you to rename Basalt Horologium like Hasbro did, what would you call it? I was digging around on Google thinking about it, and I figured given the silver color and God of a Time association, why not call it Chrome Chronos? Oh, wait, Scythe Chronos exists. Oh, Chrome Chronograph! Let me know. Anyway, that's Constellation number 30. But in Season 3, Toby got Spiral Lyra after the musical constellation Lyra, which is 31. After that, we have Jack with Befall representing the Peacock, 32. Fury, also known as 4D, also introduced Lynx, which would be Johannes' partner, so Constellation number 33. Then we have another Nemesis Blader, Cygnus, who used Christ Cygnus based on the Swan Constellation Cygnus, number 34, which I will get to later. Then to my surprise, Bao had a constellation, Hell Crown. Okay, fine, I'll use a dub name, Hades Crown, which was actually based off another constellation, Corona Borealis, of the 88 constellations of space that's representative of a crown, which I think is interesting, which makes for a constellation number 35. Oh, I forgot one more. The Kumade brothers in Fusion and Noaguma in Masters use Rock Orso, even down to the same fusion wheel. I will save that complaint for later, but it is based off the Big Bear, known as Ursa Major. And here's a surprise that's going to lead to a small tiny rant. We actually have one more. Clay Hydra 145F. This was a balance type Beyblade used primarily by the Dark Nebula Bladers foot soldiers, but it was temporarily used by Kenta because Flame Sagittario was extremely damaged by Poison Serpent. And no, it wasn't the blade that left a chunk in Doji's Dark Wolf. After Kenta lost with Clay Hydra, he used Flame again, and the chip from the battle damage got stuck in Doji's Beyblade. Which, side tangent, is why Phoenix is a better blader than Doji. Rio would obviously check and do power maintenance on his partner in spirit, and Doji was a maniacal idiot who didn't even bother to check or take care of his blade in innate sadism. But why would you give a blade like Hydra, you know, the giant sea serpent water snake, to generic foot soldiers? It's a Hydra! Not only do we have 4 water bladers, 2 of which you could argue had a better choice in that regard or could have benefited from Hydra as an upgrade, but you have so many other constellations you could have used for foot soldiers. Ursa Minor of the Little Bear, Sagitta because it's just the arrow, Aquilius the horse, Canis Ventici, the hunting dogs, or Canis Major, or Canis Minor, the great and little dog. Like, come on, there was so much to work with here. But yeah, that is the 37th and final constellation that was used in the series. That's it? Really? That's all the constellations we could have used. Wait, so video over, right? No. There's got to be another source we can use to find more constellations the Beyblade Saga used. Oh wait, the video games! They introduced some characters with their own new Beyblades because the game was released halfway through the series for some seasons, so the only characters they could use, at least for the ones that I'm going to talk about since I actually played Battle Fortress, were Jinga, Kiyoya, Kenta, Benkei, Doji, Hikaru, Hyoma, Tsubasa, and Ryuga. Yes, I find it weird Yu wasn't included in Battle Fortress, even though the survival battle aired before Tsubasa showed up. And I'm not sure I can access my Wii to test and see that since I don't have a capture card either. So I'll look up the game another time to figure that out if I'm not doing so for this video. But hey, maybe we could use some of the original game characters to add to the list. Even though there's also a small problem because some of the characters who used different constellations later ended up with canon characters in the anime and manga who would use official Beyblades with set constellations. But let's take a look. No harm, foul, right? Okay, wait, let's look at Mariko first. She used Inferno Sigas based off Cygnus, like Cygnus the Nemesis Blader. Can we replace him with her? She actually has a personality and a background. Oh wait, we can use Rochi. His blade Devil Serpentor uses Ophiuchus. The third team Zodiac is almost never used in anime, and even when it's used, it's almost never in heroic light. Which is the case here, but who cares? I said all of the Metal Saga. We got Constellation 38, which is... Okay, let's look at Tsuyoshi, who uses Iron Burrow, which uses Ursa Major. Damn it, the Kumasake brothers. They gave him Ursa Minor too. Wait. No, they gave him Ursa Major. Wait, his last name Kumade is the same as the Kumade brothers. Wait. Did they actually make a Kumade before the anime did? Oh, that's hilarious because I actually prefer his design to the others. Okay, well, what about Hajime Tsukino, who uses Tornado Gidon, which is based off the Monoceros, which is Unicorn. Damn it, Masamune. Wait, Hajime has a sister, Asami. Asami used Typhoon Lephus, which is the rabbit constellation Lepus. Perfect, constellation number 39. In fact, we got another one. Then there's Kai, a parts hunter who used Hellfire Delphus, aka the Dolphin Constellation, 40. Okay, anyone else? Well, there's Koki, who uses Fire Pavon Peacock, damn it, Jack. And Rina, who used Blaze Linkat, damn it, Johannes. Honestly, I would have taken Rina over him. Well, she's fun, me. Wait, there's two more characters from the game we can use. First is Kakeru Daichi, who used Crystal Leo, which had the constellation Leo Minor, as a nod to him being a former face hunter who tried to challenge Kyoya for leadership, but left, which makes constellation 41. And then we have Mamoru Shihoshi, a friend of Kenta's from 2nd grade, but resents the fact other classmates have left and forgotten them, with Doji trying to recruit Kenta to join their side, and he used his shield constellation Skukdom, and his Beyblade Quake shields him. So we've got constellation number 42. Well, what about the DS game I wasn't able to play, but the Metal Masters game I was? Nope, no one else fits, and someone who had Raven... Well, we already had Carte and Zidane, so the video is over, ain't it? Not yet. So, we've got 37 constellations officially used, and 42 if we count the games. So, what were the remaining 51 constellations that officially weren't used? We'll go down that list with an asterisk for those that we counted for the video games. First up, Ursa Minor for Little Bear, then Cepheus King, Cassiopeia Queen, Bootis Herdsman, Auriga Charioteer, Andromeda Chain, Triangulum Triangle, Sagitta Arrow, Delphinus Dolphin, Equius Horse, Canis Major, Great Dog, Canis Minor, Little Dog, Ophiuchus, with asterisk, the Snake Bearer, Centaur, which really would have been great for Klaus, but let me know if you want me to make that video in the future. Eridanus, River, Puppis, the Stern in Argo Navies, Vela, the Sails in Argo Navies, Pisces Austrinus, the Southern Fish, Crater the Cup, Pictor the Painter, Ara the Altar, Corona Australis, the Southern Crown, Crux the Southern Cross, Columba Dove, Coma Bernice, Hare, Canis Venatici, Hounds, aka the Hunting Dogs, Chameleon, for Chameleon, pretty self-explanatory, Leo Minor, Little Lion, which asterisk mark, Skukdom the Shield, also asterisk mark, Sextans the Sextant, which I believe is a tool used in measurement when it comes to astrology, Gus the Crane, Tucana the Toucan, Apus the Bird of Paradise, Hydrus the Male Sea Snake, Then there's Volans, the flying fish, Dorado, the golden fish, Musca, the fly. Why did Kessler not get this? In this, the Indian. I don't know why they didn't give it to a member of Team Chandora. Triangulum Austral, the southern triangle. Sculptor, the sculptor. Fornax, the furnace. Antlita, the air pump. Callium, or Calum. It's Callium. Callium, the tool, the burnum. Circinus, the compass. Mensa, the table. Microscopium, the microscope. Norma, the square. Pictor, the painter. Reticulum, reticle. Telescopium, the telescope. Octans, aka Octan, aka the navigational tool. Yes, I fact-checked all of this, and I had to double-check because I missed one a few times. So if I make a mistake, let me know in the comments. But the question becomes, why did this happen? What, were the writers and the executives just lazy? I don't think so. Season 1 gave us 18 bladers with unique energy layers. Season 2 gave us 14 unique energy layers amongst Jinga, Ryuga, and the new bladers that were introduced, giving us a total of 12 new blades. But remember, half of the team members in the anime don't exist in the manga, and the manga's choices and characters were likely made based on the toy line and what the mangaka Adachi had at the time. Think about it. I can't find any proof of Wildfang being in the manga, but Nile was probably meant to exist since he has his own blade, Horusu, which is different than the others. Lavushka's battle was skipped in the manga, and Chandora and Desert Blaze weren't even in the opening for the anime. Which is funny because Desert Blaze tricked us into thinking they were going to give us 2 new Constellation blades, but only gave us 1. Some of you are thinking I forgot to include Gasser, but Gasser's Beyblade is based off a Northern Cross, but that's an Asterim in the Cygnus constellation. There's a Cross constellation based off the Southern Cross, which we call Crux. Like how in the dub of Beyblade Burst, they changed Southern Cross shot into Crux Boost. Yeah, it's a little annoying as a localization, but in terms of translating the constellation, translation into the actual name of the constellation, it makes sense. It's just funny they did that for the next generation of Beyblade instead of the actual one that focused on the constellations. Isn't irony funny? And with 14 new blades, only 14 new Beyblades, the anime would have to reuse some older ones. Though I wonder if the anime team were allowed the option to make up a Beyblade with a unique layer but with similar parts. Though, for the anime, given that Wang Huzhong, Chao, and Mei Mei didn't exist in the manga, so they got Virgo and Aquarius, but with different fusion wheels. Lavushka added Noaguma, even though the other 2 didn't have their own Beyblades in the manga, so all 3 of them either had new takes on old blades, with Alexei getting Burn Wolf instead of Doji's Dark Wolf, but Lyra and Noaguma both reused Busujima and Kumasake's Beyblades. You know, Rock Orso and Poison Virgo. Poison Scorpio, I think. All at Chandora used different fusion wheels from Reiji Serpent. Wildfang gave Demure Counter Scorpio, and was probably a better Scorpio user than the first guy. Klaus got Capricorn, but with a different fusion wheel in Grand. While if the toy line had 1 Cetus, you might as well just give it to both Sophie and Wills with different attributes, which is smart. Brand synergy, creative. Then for the Garcias, Selen and Enzo weren't in the manga, so the anime gave them Argo's fusion wheel, Ray, and the Gasher blade, and hence why Starbreaker's members are the only ones where every member of the team has their own Beyblade. And even then, when you count the coach Ziggurat, he just got another strong Capricorn Beyblade. That's enough Capricorns for 1 series, man. No shade to my Capricorns in the audience. Apparently, people hate y'all or say our Zodiac is the worst, and I have no idea. That's a little unfair. So, if not the anime's fault or the mangaka's fault, Why did the toy line start shifting so there were barely any constellations and just mythological beasts and solely the planets? Well, it's easy to argue laziness since the video games either tried to make new Beyblades based on constellations that weren't used at the time, or also used different mythological beasts, but given that the toy line was introducing the concept of planets and the main players would be legendary, they probably gave the manga and anime team enough time to let them know to plan ahead and reconsider how they were going to adjust for both the final arc of the manga and Metal Fury. Because, to its credit, we did get a few people with new constellations. Chris, Toby, Zio, Johannes, Sickness, even Bao, which was unexpected but also made sense from a red herring perspective. They also probably felt like since there was a gimmick to be had with the planets, they didn't really need to have a secondary gimmick for the constellations for anyone who had one. No, you can make an argument that they both have a constellation and planet element, but I will talk about that in a future video. Plus, with Zero G and Shogun Steel, there's only 3 characters you could argue have Beyblades that fit a constellation too, which I believe would be Ren, Garuda, since Phoenix and Garuda, and Takanosuke with his eco-related Beyblade. So while we will talk about those in the future, we'll just have to wait for that conversation. And boy, am I tired. This one's gonna be hell to edit, isn't it? Alright, I'm gonna end it here. There's a lot more we can talk about and consider, but we'll save those videos for future topics. Let me know which of these would you like me to follow up on in the future. And BIP Bizarre Interesting Productions, thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. We are getting closer to 500 subs, and I want to aim there before September starts. So help me out, make that dream come true. Thanks for watching again, and signing off.